A 68-year-old man in Ohio got pulled over for rolling through a stop sign. The officer walked up to his window, asked one simple question, and within 30 seconds, that driver had handed over everything the officer needed to write him a ticket, extend the stop, and flag his insurance. He didn't do anything wrong after the pullover. He just talked. He said 7 words that cost him hundreds of dollars, a spike in his insurance premium, and nearly his clean driving record. Those 7 words were, "Yeah, I probably didn't stop fully." I'm George, and I've spent years tracking how traffic stops actually work in America, the laws, the enforcement changes, the court rulings, and the quiet shifts in how officers are trained to handle drivers like you. I study every DMV update, every body camera policy change, and every new enforcement trend that affects drivers on the road today, so you don't have to piece it all together yourself. My job is simple: give you the real information so you can protect yourself, your license, and your freedom every single time you get behind the wheel. Here's what's changed, and I want you to understand this before we get into the 5 specific things you must never say, because if you don't understand the bigger picture, the individual rules won't fully stick. Before 2020, most traffic stops in America happened in a kind of gray zone. An officer's memory was the main record. What you said, how you said it, whether you apologized or explained yourself, it mostly stayed between you and that officer. You might have said something unwise, but unless the officer wrote it down, it rarely followed you into a courtroom. That world is gone. As of 2025, 87% of police departments across the United States equip their officers with body-worn cameras. In major cities in states like California, Texas, Florida, New York, and Illinois, that number is essentially 100%. Every patrol car in most departments also has a dashboard. Camera pointed directly at your vehicle, and here is the part most people still don't fully grasp. Those cameras start recording before the officer even gets out of the car. By the time that officer reaches your window, everything you say, every word, every casual comment, every apology, every explanation is already being recorded and preserved as potential evidence. This is not a scare tactic. This is the legal reality of 2026. And if you've been driving safely for 30 or 40 years, this matters to you more than it matters to someone who just got their license, because you've spent decades doing the right thing on the road, and the last thing in the world you need is your own words being used to undo all of that. The good news, and there absolutely is good news here, is that you don't have to say the wrong thing. You just have to know what to say instead, and that's exactly what we're going to cover right now. Let's start with the number 1 mistake drivers make at a traffic stop, and it happens in the very first 10 seconds of the encounter. The officer walks to your window, he leans down, he looks at you, and he asks the question that sounds the most innocent of all. Do you know why I pulled you over? Most people answer that question immediately, automatically, without thinking, and when they do, they hand that officer exactly what he needs to make the stop stick in court. You might say, "I think I was going a little fast," or maybe, "I might have rolled that stop sign a little," or even just, "I'm not sure, maybe my speed." Every single one of those answers is a legally usable admission of guilt that is now captured on camera and can be played back in front of a judge. Imagine you're driving home from your doctor's appointment on a Tuesday afternoon. You're on a familiar road, you've driven it 100 times, and maybe you were doing 47 in a 40. The officer pulls you over. He asks the question. You say, "Oh, I was probably going a little over the limit, sorry about that." You think you're being cooperative, honest, polite. But here's the legal reality. You just confessed. That officer doesn't need his radar gun reading anymore. He doesn't need to fight you in court. You gave him a signed confession on camera, and you did it with a smile. In states like Ohio, Texas, and Georgia, a verbal admission of a traffic violation captured on a body camera carries the same legal weight as a signed written statement. The fix is simple, calm, polite, and completely legal. When the officer asks, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" you say this: "I don't know why you pulled me over," nothing more. No apology, no speculation, no explanation, just that one sentence, delivered respectfully. You're not lying, you're not being rude, you're exercising your Fifth Amendment right not to create evidence against yourself, and you're doing it in the most professional way possible. You can be warm and cooperative in your tone while still protecting your legal rights. Hand over your license, registration, and proof of insurance when asked. You are legally required to do that. But beyond those documents, your words are yours to keep. And here is the thing that should keep you watching, because the first mistake is just the opening move. The second one is where things can go from a routine traffic stop to something far more serious. This one affects every driver who has ever had a glass of wine with dinner before getting behind the wheel. The officer has your license and registration. He's walking back to his car. Then he leans back over and asks it, "Have you been drinking tonight?" And you think, "Well, I only had one glass of wine 2 hours ago with dinner. I'm completely fine." So you say, "I just had a couple of drinks earlier, nothing serious." You think that sounds responsible, honest, like someone who has nothing to hide. But what you just said, those 9 words, gave that officer legal probable cause to pull you out of your car and put you through a field sobriety test on the side of the road. Here is how this plays out in the real world. A 71-year-old woman in Florida went to her granddaughter's birthday dinner. She had 2 glasses of wine over 3 hours. She was completely sober by every reasonable measure. On the way home, she was stopped for a broken taillight. The officer asked if she had been drinking. She said, "Just a glass of wine at dinner." That single sentence triggered a field sobriety test in a dark parking lot, which she partially failed because of her arthritis, and she spent 4 hours at the station before a breathalyzer confirmed she was well within the legal limit. She wasn't charged, but she was humiliated. Her family was terrified. And it all started with one sentence she didn't have to say. According to experienced defense attorneys across states like Florida, Illinois, and Wisconsin, admitting to even one drink during a traffic stop gives an officer probable cause to begin a DUI investigation regardless of whether you are actually impaired. The law does not require proof of impairment to begin the process, it only requires reasonable suspicion, and your own words create that suspicion in an instant. Your blood alcohol level might be 0.03, well below the legal limit of 0.08 in all 50 states. It doesn't matter. You said you drank, and now the stop has escalated. The right answer to "Have you been drinking tonight?" is this: I'd rather not answer questions without a lawyer present. You can say it calmly. You can say it politely. You can even say it with a smile. You are not required to answer that question. The Fifth Amendment protects you, and any officer who tells you otherwise is not giving you accurate legal information. Stay polite. Stay calm. Don't explain. Don't apologize. And don't fill the silence with more words. The silence is your friend. But wait, because the third mistake is the one that can lead directly to your car being searched, and most people make it before they even realize what happened. This one happens fast. The officer has your documents. He's already asked a few questions. Then he says almost casually, "Mind if I take a quick look in your car?" And you think, "Well, I have nothing to hide, so why not?" You say, "Sure, go ahead," or even just, "Yeah, that's fine." And just like that, in less than 2 seconds, you have voluntarily given up one of your most powerful constitutional rights. The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution protects you from unreasonable searches and seizures without your consent and without a warrant. An officer generally needs what's called probable cause, visible, specific evidence of a crime before legally searching your vehicle. Think about this. You've owned your car for years. You keep it clean, but maybe there's a prescription bottle in the glove box. Maybe there's an old pair of work gloves on the back seat. Maybe there's something a friend left behind the last time they rode with you and you forgot about it entirely. The moment you say go ahead, that officer can open every compartment, every bag, every container in your car, and if he finds anything that looks suspicious, even something completely innocent, the stop is no longer a traffic stop. It is now a criminal investigation, and you invited him involuntarily. Here is the critical legal fact that most drivers don't know. Refusing to consent to a search cannot be used against you as evidence of guilt. Courts have ruled on this repeatedly. Saying no does not give the officer probable cause. It does not make you a suspect. It simply means the officer now has to do his job the lawful way either find actual probable cause based on what he can see, or walk back to his car and let you go. The phrase that protects you is 4 words. I do not consent. Say it clearly. Say it politely. Officer, I do not consent to any searches. That's it, and then stop talking. If you're still watching right now, I want to tell you something. Most people click away before they get to this part, but you're still here, and that tells me something about you. You take your driving seriously, and you want to protect what matters. The next 2 mistakes I'm about to share are ones that almost nobody talks about. But they're catching drivers off guard every single day right now in 2026, and one of them is going to surprise you. The phone mistake. This one is exploding in 2026, and here's why. As of this year, 48 states have hands-free driving laws in effect. States like California, Georgia, Tennessee, Colorado, and Oregon have already moved these laws to what's called primary enforcement status, meaning an officer can pull you over for phone. Use alone, no other reason needed, and fines for first offenses now range from $150 in some states all the way up to $500 or more in states like California and Oregon. But the fine itself is not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is what happens when the officer walks up to your window and says, "I noticed you were looking at your phone back there, were you using it?" And you say something like, "Oh, I just glanced at my GPS for a second," or "I got a quick notification and I just checked it." You think you're minimizing the situation. You think you're being honest and explaining yourself so the officer understands. But what you just did is admit on camera to looking at your phone while driving. That admission covers the legal standard for a distracted driving violation in virtually every state. It doesn't matter if it was 1 second. It doesn't matter if it was the GPS. The law doesn't distinguish between Instagram and Google Maps in most states. A hand on the phone is a violation, and you just confess to it. What should you say? If the officer asks whether you were on your phone, you respond the same way. "I'd rather not answer any questions without a lawyer present." It sounds formal, but it is fully legal. You are not required to answer, and if you genuinely were not on your phone, saying nothing is still far better than trying to explain what you were or weren't doing, because any explanation creates a verbal record that can be used against you if the officer decides to write the ticket anyway. Stay calm. Stay quiet beyond the basics. Protect yourself. And now we come to the fifth mistake. This one is the sneakiest of all because it doesn't feel like a mistake at all. It feels like friendly conversation. The officer leans on your window. The traffic stop feels like it's wrapping up. He already has your documents in his hand, and he asks, "Where are you headed today?" And you think that's just small talk, so you answer naturally, "Oh, I'm heading over to my buddy Ray's house," or maybe just driving back from my sister's place over in Riverside, or maybe I was over at the casino for a few hours and now I'm heading home. You have no idea that this seemingly harmless exchange is a trained interrogation technique used in departments across the country. Law enforcement officers are specifically trained to use casual conversation to gather what's called timeline and travel pattern information. When you tell an officer where you're coming from, where you're going, and how long you've been driving, you are giving them data points that they immediately begin cross-checking against what they can already see. If you say you're coming from a restaurant and the officer can see an open container in the back seat, that's probable cause. If you say you've been driving for 10 minutes but the officer knows the nearest town is 45 minutes away, that inconsistency is enough to legally extend the stop and begin a deeper investigation. And if you mention you were at a bar or a casino, even casually, and even if you had nothing to drink, the officer now has a reason documented on camera to escalate the encounter. Your destination is your private business. You have no legal obligation to tell any officer where you are going, where you came from, or what you were doing before you got in your car. The correct response to "Where are you headed today?" is this: "I'd prefer not to answer questions. Am I free to go?" That second question is critical. "Am I free to go?" Forces the officer to make a decision on the record. Either the stop is over and you may leave, or he has a specific legal reason to continue detaining you. He must answer. And if he says yes, you are free to leave calmly, politely, and without another word. Here is exactly what I want you to do this week. First, write down or save these 5 exact phrases somewhere you can easily remember them. "I don't know why you pulled me over. I'd rather not answer questions without a lawyer present. I do not consent to any searches. Am I free to go?" And if you need to invoke it clearly, "I am exercising my right to remain silent." These 5 phrases are your shield at any traffic stop in any state in America. They are not rude. They are not suspicious. They are your constitutional rights spoken aloud, and every American has the right to use them. Second, remind yourself of this important boundary. You must always provide your license, your vehicle registration, and your proof of insurance when an officer requests them. That is the law in all 50 states, and there is no exception. Complying with that request is not optional. Everything else, every question beyond those documents is optional, and you have the right to decline. Third, keep your hands visible at all times during a traffic stop. Both hands on the steering wheel from the moment you pull over. Do not reach for anything until the officer asks. Do not make sudden movements. Stay calm, stay still, and wait for the officer's instructions. This protects you and it protects the tone of the entire stop. Fourth, check the hands-free driving law in your specific state right now this week before your next drive. In states like California, Oregon, and Georgia, even touching your phone at a red light is now a primary violation with fines that start at $150 and can reach $500 for a first offense. Know your state's rules. So you never give an officer a reason to pull you over in the first place. Fifth, and maybe most importantly, practice staying quiet. This sounds simple, but it isn't. Most of us are raised to be polite and to answer questions when someone asks them. An officer with a badge asking you a direct question is going to feel like a situation where silence is rude or suspicious. It isn't. Silence is legal. Silence is smart, and silence at a traffic stop is the single most powerful thing you can do to protect yourself. A calm, respectful "I'd rather not answer any questions" is not confrontational. It's the behavior of someone who knows their rights. Here's the one thing I want you to carry with you after this video. Your words at a traffic stop are not just words. In 2026, they are recorded evidence the moment the officer's camera turns on, and that camera turns on before he ever reaches your window. 87% of police departments in America now use body cameras. Your casual comment, your honest apology, your friendly explanation, all of it is on tape. And any of it can be used against you in court without any further investigation needed. You've driven safely for decades. That matters, your record matters, your independence matters, and none of it should be undone in a 10-second conversation you didn't have to have. You now know what not to say, you now know what to say instead, and you know exactly why it matters in 2026 more than it has ever mattered before. Keep those 5 phrases somewhere close. Use them calmly, use them politely, and never apologize for exercising rights that belong to you. Tell me in the comments which of these 5 surprised you the most.